Why do my knees hurt when I'm doing all the right things? I stay active, I stretch, I try to eat well, but some days it still feels like my joints are fighting against me. Does that sound familiar? If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. And here's the surprising part. It might not be your age. It might be a single, common workout move that millions of people, especially over 60, are told to do. Even though it may be quietly damaging your knees every time, and no one tells you. The truth is, after 60, your body plays by different rules. Your joints have seen decades of wear. Your muscles recover more slowly. Inflammation builds faster. And the cushioning cartilage in your knees? It starts to thin, especially if you have or are developing osteoarthritis, which affects millions of older adults. That means certain movements that seemed fine in your 40s or 50s now come with hidden risks. And today, we're talking about the worst offender. You've probably heard this one praised as a total body fat burner. Trainers love it. Boot camps swear by it. But for older adults, it's a silent knee killer. They're called burpees. Now, if you've never done a burpee, here's what it involves. You start standing, then you drop into a deep squat. You kick your legs back into a push-up position. You do the push-up, then you jump back to your feet and leap into the air. That's all in one rep. Sounds intense? It is. But here's the catch. It's not just the intensity. It's the combination of two joint-damaging elements, deep knee flexion and high-impact jumping. When you drop into that deep squat position, especially if your heels lift or your knees collapse inward, you're compressing your knee joint. The cartilage inside, called the meniscus, acts like a shock absorber. But when it's already thinned or inflamed from age, that deep flexion can grind it down even more. You might not notice it right away, but over time, you start feeling stiffness, soreness, or a painful pop after workouts. Now add the jump. Each time you land, especially if you land hard or off balance, your knees absorb a sudden jolt of force. In younger athletes with strong muscle control, that might be manageable. But for older adults, with reduced muscle mass and slower reflexes, the landing becomes a minefield for your knees. There's even a term for what often happens, valgus collapse, when your knees cave inward during landings or squats. This puts massive pressure on your ligaments and cartilage, leading to pain, inflammation, and sometimes injury. And here's what makes burpees particularly risky. They demand perfect form, in multiple phases: the squat, the plank, the push-up, the jump. If any part is off, even slightly, the impact multiplies. Now think about doing that in a group class, or when you're tired, or on a hard floor. It's a recipe for knee strain, especially if you already have arthritis, previous injuries, or balance issues. You might be thinking, but I thought burpees were great for heart health. And yes, they do get your heart rate up. But at what cost? For people over 60, the wear and tear often outweighs the benefit, especially when safer, more joint-friendly alternatives exist. Some viewers have written in saying they only started having knee pain after adding burpees to their routine. It's subtle at first, maybe some soreness in the morning or a little stiffness after walking upstairs. But it builds. And before long, you're wondering why your knees ache even on rest days. That's because burpees don't just challenge your strength or endurance, they target your joints, whether you're ready or not. So if you've been pushing through burpees thinking, no pain, no gain, this is your gentle reminder. Pain is not progress. Pain is your body waving a red flag. Now, if you're thinking, well, I can modify burpees, you're absolutely right. And we'll get to that. Because there are smarter, safer ways to get the same benefits without the risk. But before we talk about what to do instead, there are two more everyday exercises that might be silently wrecking your knees. And you probably never suspected them. And one of them you may be using as your main form of cardio. Let's talk about that next. Let's talk about two more exercises that seem healthy on the surface, but may quietly wear down your knees if you're over 60. The first one surprises a lot of people because it's often recommended for building balance and leg strength. You've probably seen it in physical therapy routines, home workouts, or even in senior fitness classes. It's the forward lunge. Here's the thing about lunges. When they're done correctly, with proper form, under the right conditions, they can be useful. But for many older adults, they create more problems than they solve. Why? Because lunges put an uneven load on the knees, especially the front knee, and demand excellent alignment, stability, and muscle control. Most people don't realize how easy it is to overstep or to let the front knee drift too far forward, putting pressure directly on the kneecap. And with age, we often lose the flexibility and proprioception, that's body awareness, needed to catch those mistakes in real time. The result? You might feel a sharp pinch during the movement, or maybe it's just a subtle ache afterward. But over time, that repetitive strain builds up. One study found that the lunge, especially when the knee extends past the toes, significantly increases the compressive force behind the kneecap. For someone with arthritis or thinning cartilage, that can feel like grinding bone on bone. Even worse, lunges demand balance, and as we age, our balance naturally declines. That means each time you step forward into a lunge, there's a small risk of wobbling or even falling. And a fall in your 60s or 70s can lead to more than just bruises. It can mean fractures, hospital visits, and months of recovery. Some people try to modify lunges by doing shallow versions or holding onto a chair, which can help. But the underlying problem remains. Forward lunges are a high-risk, low-reward movement for most people over 60. Now let's move on to the third sneaky knee wrecker. You've seen it in every gym. Maybe you've used it thinking it's a safe, low-impact way to get cardio, and in theory, it should be. But the Stairmaster, or any continuous stair climbing machine, can be quietly brutal on your knees. Here's why. Every step you take on the Stairmaster involves repetitive, loaded knee flexion. That means your knees bend deeply, again and again, with your full body weight behind each step. For younger joints, that might be fine. But in older adults, this motion compresses the knee joint thousands of times in a single session. If you already have some arthritis, that's like sanding away at the cartilage with each step. One expert compared it to doing mini lunges over and over, with no rest and poor form creeping in as you fatigue. You might notice your knees feeling swollen afterward, or maybe a heavy dragging sensation while walking the next day. That's your body telling you, hey, I'm not bouncing back like I used to. There's also the balance factor again. Climbing steps at a fast pace can feel unstable, especially if your hands are gripping the rails for dear life. Over time, that awkward posture can affect not just your knees, but your hips and lower back too. Now let's be clear, moving your body is essential. We're not here to scare you away from exercise. We're here to shine a light on the specific movements that may not serve you anymore, at least not in their current form. Because most of these routines, burpees, lunges, the Stairmaster, were designed for younger, high-impact fitness. They weren't built with aging joints, slower recovery, or degenerative conditions in mind. So if you've been dealing with stiffness, soreness, or swelling after workouts, it's not in your head. And it's not your fault. Your body isn't broken. It's just asking for a different approach. One that's smarter, kinder, more sustainable. And the good news? That approach exists. There are exercises that support your knees while still keeping you strong, lean, and active. You don't have to quit moving. You just have to choose movements that match your stage of life. So now that we've talked about what to avoid, let's talk about what works. Coming up next, the safe, powerful alternatives that can protect your knees, boost your energy, and help you feel strong again. Without the pain, without the damage. Let's dive in. Now that you know which exercises to avoid, let's talk about what can help. Because even though burpees, forward lunges, and Stairmasters may not be serving your knees anymore, that doesn't mean you're out of options. In fact, the right exercises can still give you strength, mobility, and energy without grinding your joints or putting you at risk. Let's start with one that surprises people: the squat burpee. Now, before you get nervous, this is a modified version. Instead of dropping into a deep crouch or jumping, you simply step back into a plank from a controlled squat and step forward again to stand. No jumping, no slamming your knees, just strength and core engagement with much less stress. Fitness. Experts like Les Mills recommend this version specifically for joint protection. It activates the right muscles, legs, glutes, and core without the damaging flexion or impact of traditional burpees. And if that still feels like too much, you can even do the movement from a raised platform or box. That way, you're not loading the knees at full depth, you're working smarter. Next up, the air bike, sometimes called the fan bike. This machine gives you a cardio workout without impact. No pounding, no stairs, just a smooth pedaling motion that gets your heart rate up and strengthens your legs gently. What makes it so valuable for older adults is how it spares your knees while still offering a powerful conditioning workout. You can go hard, go easy, or alternate, and the resistance adjusts naturally with your pace. If you don't have access to an air bike, try a recumbent bike or elliptical. Both are excellent low-impact options that keep the joints moving without compression. They help lubricate your knees, increase blood flow, and reduce stiffness, all without the grinding sensation of high-impact cardio. Another underrated option is the box thruster. This is a combination of a squat and an overhead press, but you do it from a raised surface like a box or bench. This limits how deep you go into the squat, which protects the knees and shifts more focus onto your hips and core. It's a great way to build strength, stability, and even support your balance without overstressing your joints. And of course, don't forget the classics: swimming, walking in water, or gentle yoga. These low-impact activities support joint health, reduce inflammation, and keep you mobile in ways that feel refreshing instead of punishing. Remember, your knees aren't failing you. They're just asking for movements that match where you are now in life. And when you listen, when you adjust, something amazing happens. You stop feeling defeated. You start feeling empowered. Because it's not about giving up. It's about choosing wisely, protecting your independence, and moving forward with confidence on your own terms. So here's what I want you to do next. Pick one of the exercises we mentioned today. Just one. Try it gently. See how your body responds. Let your knees be your guide, not your enemy. And when you do, come back and tell me how it went. Leave a comment below. Let me know which exercise surprised you the most. Was it burpees, lunges, the Stairmaster? Or maybe the one you're most excited to try now? And if you found this video helpful, or if you want more clear science-backed tips for staying strong after 60, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps you stay informed, and it helps this channel reach more people who need it. Because here's the truth: your strength is still there. Your energy is still there. It's just waiting for the right movement to unlock it. Your independence is carried by your legs. Protect them wisely.